All right, everyone, welcome back. In this series, I have been coding up a stocks and finance app. We've gone along the way of building out a backend in GraphQL, mocking out some data, even using an API to pull some real data in. The focus of today's video is we're going to take what you're seeing here, which is a design of a screen for an individual stock. We're looking at the Apple stock here. And we're going to code this up in React Native and Expo. So the focus is really primarily using text and view components along with lots of styles to achieve this outcome that we're seeing here in Figma. But along the way, we'll probably touch on a little bit of GraphQL just because we'll be using the data we're getting back from GraphQL in order to get this result. Hi, Michael. Thanks for tuning in. Yes, I do want to do a 2023 edition of Ultimate Node Docker. Thank you for asking. You're the first person to ask. I've been meaning to do that. I know we're 3 months in, but I will do that because I do have some updates. All right, well, let's get to today's video. Before we dig into the UI portion, I do want to do something real fast, which is I'm going to go into the app right now. Now, I will admit I have cheated a little bit. I have updated this version of Expo to one that has Expo Router in it. So I'm using Expo Router. Now, Expo Router is brand new, and I'm not completely an expert in it yet. So I'm not going to cover that much right now, but just know that if things look different here, then that's why. But one thing I do want to do is we've got the file of, let's see. We've got the file for the screen we're going to be dealing with today. And since I've looked at this last, I've updated the GraphQL schema and query for this. And I can see that something's erroring out back here. So one thing that I don't have in here is I don't have GraphQL Codegen to build out the Typescript types for this. So before we get going on the UI, I'm going to add GraphQL Codegen real fast. So let's go to the GraphQL Codegen website. I'm going to pull this up into a different window real fast. And let's go to the documentation. So we'll be doing this on the front end, and let's see how we install that. For this Expo app, we're using NPM. So I already have GraphQL and Typescript. That's great. So let's go ahead and install the GraphQL Codegen CLI. So let me open up a new terminal and add that here. So after we install that package, then it does have this nice setup wizard for us. So let's run this as well. And don't forget afterwards, you want to do another npm install to get some new dependencies based upon your setup. This application is built with React. Great. Where is your schema? Ours happens to be at localhost 4000/GraphQL. Where are your operations and fragments? It's close to what is suggested here, but let's do the, let's do root / all of those, TSX. Where to write the output? I want to put the output in a generated directory. We'll just do the defaults on these. The script that I want to run, I usually call mine build::types. I'm going to do that so I can remember what I called it. Okay, so we've built this. Let's do another npm install because it would have added another dependency to our package.json. So we're looking at our package.json file, and I can see that it added a build Typescript. I have added the GraphQL Codegen CLI, and then it also added this GraphQL Codegen client preset. I don't know why that's not in alphabetical order like everything else, but for our own OCD, let's go ahead and put it like so. Okay, so we should have types now. Let me go back here to my file tree, and I should see now, oh, I actually haven't run the generator. Okay, let's run the generator. npm build types. Did you mean this? npm run build types? Why, yes, I did. Okay, so we can see that we're getting an error here. This is actually fine because this is an error in my code. In the past couple of videos, as I've been working in the backend, I've renamed some things. So this PE ratio forward, these now have a lowercase w and d. All right, as I save there, I can see things refreshing, things are starting to work again, and I can see now I have this generated list of types. So let me go to this file I've been working on. Right now it's called symbol, but that doesn't really matter for now. And in this use query hook that I'm using, now that I have Codegen installed, I can add types to this. So this query is called Lookup. So if I do lookup query, I now have a type that I can import from these generated types that will allow me to actually fully type out the resulting data for this query, which is really awesome. So I can see here I've got this updated field that needs to be adjusted. Dividend yield, I'm assuming returns here, but now I can see that it can be null or undefined. So let's make some alternatives for this. Let's say if it is null, let's just return a dash. And so now everything checks out. I'm kind of racing through this because this is not the point of today's video. I really want to get to the UI here, but I wanted to at least get this on film, per se, and so you can see that here. So let's add GraphQL Codegen and generate types. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at, again, what we're trying to accomplish. We want to build out this screen here. And in other videos in this series, I've kind of just mocked out this screen. I had a video about charting. We're not going to go into charts today. In fact, there is a chart in the design. We're going to skip that today. We're going to focus on mostly the top here. And I have like this search bar place up here. I'm going to leave this search bar intact, and I'll probably maybe leave this revenue chart intact, and I'm going to put this design that we're seeing here in the middle. So we'll be developing everything in the middle here. All right, so I think that is good. I think we can just go ahead and get going here. I'm looking right now. It looks like this background is gray to me. I don't know if that is my eyes playing a trick on me or if it is actually gray. It looks gray to me. We'll maybe figure that out along the way. All right, so let's get to coding this Figma design. I guess we'll just start at the top and work our way down. All right, so I do have everything, all the data that's needed for this. We are going to be pulling from this GraphQL backend that I've created. And in the last video that I did, we created this schema and this query, and we've returned all sorts of mock data. So if any of these numbers look weird to you, if you happen to follow stocks, and the Apple stock in particular, some of this is mock data. So ignore some of the actual numbers. But we do have a data source that we're pulling from. So we'll be using this data source in order to fetch the appropriate data that we need in order to generate this, and then we'll build up the UI. All right, so let's start at the top. We've got the AAPL, which is the symbol for this stock. We've got the company name here, and we've even got the logo. So we're probably going to build this up. This is kind of naturally in sections, which is nice. Thanks, designer Kevin. And we will build it up section by section. So let's go in here and let's see. We've got a symbol page. Let's go to, we're probably going to build this into, do I want to start out by separating this into files or start in one big long file? We'll start in one big long file at first and maybe break out some components along the way. So right now I have this thing called simple table, which is showing off some data here, and that will end up replacing. So I'm going to delete that. We do have this revenue section down here. That's fine. We're going to leave that alone. So let's start in here. I do want the symbol, and I need the company name. So we've got company name in here. Let me check, though, my most recent query, because I do have some updated things in here. In fact, I think I'm just going to pull in this entire query so we can use that as designed. So I'm going to copy and paste this entire query in and then see what we need to adjust to keep this revenue chart. I do want to keep this revenue chart. So this revenue is underneath the root level lookup, and that is really all that's used for that revenue chart. So I'm just going to pull this, delete the old query, and we'll bring this down here so we can keep that. So this is the top level lookup query. I do want to name this lookup to match our type. So let me save this. And then I should be able to, let's see, I do have, I had to have a resolution here that is currently set to quarterly. I'm going to remove these variables for now. I want to keep this as much like my example from last time as possible. We'll make this quarterly. We'll hit save. We do have some issues here, but let's try generating our types and see if we can at least get that far. Okay, enum resolution cannot represent non-enum value quarterly. Okay, let's remove our quotes. I think our quotes is the issue there. Okay, so we were able to generate types. That is great. Now, let's take a look at revenue data. I think we can see here that lookup doesn't exist anymore. So let's see what exists on data. What exists is a main and a comparison. Hey, John, thanks for tuning in. And let's just get this revenue working real fast. Let me go to my screen here. Okay, we've got a revenue chart in. We've got a new query in. Again, we haven't even gotten to any UI yet. I'm really just trying to get a baseline query in, which has all the data I need so that we can get to working on the UI. Okay, we're there. Okay, so let's start with just getting in text values and, we have an image. Okay, so, and we'll get an image in as well. So let's look at text, and I can pull off my data. This is the beauty. This is why we took a few minutes in the beginning to bring in GraphQL Codegen, because it makes our lives so much easier. Now that I've moved to Typescript over the last few years, I can barely function without types. It feels so brittle. So we have our main lookup that we're doing. In the UI, we're also comparing this stock to the S&P 500, which is, you can use the VU ETF. So we are dividing our data between our main stock lookup and a comparison. So let's look at main, and then let's look at symbol. That's the first bit of text we want to pull in. And then the next bit of text is company name. So if I just save this real fast, We can already see Apple, Apple Inc. Coming in here. Let me, can I hard code this? No. Okay, let's go to, I'm gonna real fast make a revenue header and make a margin top of like 100, just so that I can separate this out from everything else. Okay, we're dealing up here. Checking my video, checking the chat. Okay, looking good. So we've got Apple and Apple Inc. Now, let's look at image. Let's see, so we've got image base, image background, image editor, image store. You know what I want to do is look up Expo image, not image picker. Let's look at Expo image. Don't know why I'm on unversioned here. Can I go to latest? Yes. Okay. Expo image, cross-platform React component that loads and renders images. That's exactly what we want. Okay, so we do have to install it. That's interesting. And we just give it image, source, etc. So let's go ahead and install Expo image. I don't think I have that yet. Okay, we've installed Expo image. We'll pull this in. There's a style, there's a source. I do have a source in the API. So let's just try that. So image is probably not going to register quite yet. So let's pull this in ourselves. That OCD is really kicking in today. Okay, image source, and we do have data main dot logo URL. We'll save this. Cannot find native model Expo image. Okay, let me restart my server. Now that we have added some new dependencies, let's restart. I'll hit I to load into iOS. I'll hit R to refresh. Cannot find native module Expo image. Image from Expo image. We've installed it. That's good. Okay. I feel like I'm being tricked. This should be easier. What am I doing wrong? Import image from Expo image. Import image from Expo image. All right, let's not get hung up on the simple stuff today. Okay, style, placeholder, content fit, transition. I mean, it looks fairly straightforward to me. It even works, it works on Android, iOS, and the web. Currently, Expo image can only be used with development builds. It is not available in Expo Go and Expo Snack yet. Okay. Interesting. Let's just try, instead of Expo image, I guess that is maybe just too bleeding. Is this bleeding edge at the moment? It may be. Okay, we're backing out, and we're going to try just the plain old React Native image. Now, note that you need to manually specify the dimensions of your image. Okay, let's not try Expo image, and instead let's try React Native image. Now let's at least just see if we don't get an error. Okay, we don't get an error. We don't see an image, but I believe that is based upon this little yellow note here that says, note that for network and data images, you will need to manually specify dimensions for your image. Okay, so let's do we do have a red squiggly here. let's look at, so style source. Source, if we're doing a URL, we need to give it a URI, key in a object. I almost said hash, like my Rubiness was poking out from a decade ago. Okay, so let's go to image. We'll need to make a style for this. Let's make this into an object. This is URI. Those red squigglies are still red squigglies. URL could be undefined. So let's say if it is undefined, we're just not going to display an image at all. Okay, now let's save this. Okay, we still don't see an image. I'm guessing that's because of the style though. So let's do styles. Let's do styles.logo. We don't have a logo yet. That is okay. So let's just do a width and height of 100 here. GitHub Copilot is really helping me out on the autocompletion today. But I saved this and we don't have an image, which is very unfortunate. Let's take a look at our data here. So our data is giving us this logo URL. If I command click this, we do in fact get an image. So it's not that. We should have this logo URL. We have that. Okay, let's check this again. Width, height. Width, height. Source, we do have URI. Okay. Not sure. Okay, let's take a look. You know what? Let's do it. Everyone's favorite debugging mechanism, adding borders. Okay, turns out we don't have borders in here. You know what else we're going to do? We're going to console log out data.main. And I'm going to restart. You know what I'm going to do? npm uninstall expo image, because we're not using that anymore. Let me make sure that goes away out of package.json. It does. That's good. Let's restart our server, just kind of cleaning up some things here. Okay. Loading. And we have an image. Why did that work? Folks, I have no idea. But a nice little restart of the server and getting rid of Expo image actually helped us. So that was kind of a whim that I restarted, but it did help us. Okay, so we don't need our borders anymore. We do, in fact, have an image showing up. All right, so let's get to some layout here and some typography. So we've got 3 things here. We want them all laid out in this nice little row. We want a specific font that we're using. We've got colors, we've got sizes here. So let's, trying to think, this file is going to get unwieldy quickly. So I do think I want to go ahead and break this out into some components. So I'm going to build up some components, and I'm going to say that I'm going to call this header. I'm going to add a directory for, let's call this stocks for now. So component/stocks/ header.tsx. And do I have, okay, I made a little snippet in my VS Code that goes ahead and creates some basic components for me here. So I've got header component. I want to move these things into the header component and then call this. Now, because we're dealing with data and we're dealing with things that are coming into here, I do want to go ahead and define what type of data is required for each of these components. If I look at my query, I can see that the lookup query returns a lookup type. And then on that type, I've got symbol, I've got company name, I've got logo URL. So there's a thing in GraphQL. Turns out this is also a GraphQL video. There's a thing in GraphQL called fragments. And what's great about being able to break out components like this is we can specify on the component itself what type of fragments are also necessary. So I'm going to go down here, and the component's called header. And I'm going to, we're making this up, I'm going to add a property on here called fragments. Don't worry about the red squigglies, we will fix those momentarily. So I'm going to say, I'm going to add what's called a lookup fragment on here. Import my GQL tag. And we're going to build up a fragment that defines all of the data that we need for this component. Now, I have GitHub Copilot installed, which is awesome and is going to help us along the way. So we're going to create a fragment called header lookup. And I think it will help if I show you side by side both what we're working on and how this will be used. So in my query here, I've got lots of things, and I know that we're going to add a header here. But let's say that I don't know what data exactly is required for header when we're building up this query, or maybe as time goes on, maybe we add or move things from the header. So what I want to be able to do here in this query is say ... require everything in header lookup. So this will be a fragment that we can include in this query. Now, in order to get this to work, I need to add the fragment down here. So we'll do header.fragments. Again, we'll fix these red squigglies, .lookup. So let's build up this fragment. So let's pull in the items that we're using here. So we're going to use the symbol, the company name, and the logo URL. Okay? So here we'll add symbol is required, company name, and logo URL. So this is a brand new fragment that is kind of like just a partial of the data that's required. So let's fix some more red squigglies here. We've got text that we need. We've got image coming from React Native. We've got a logo style that we created earlier that we'll pull into this file, and then data. So let's pull in a symbol, and the symbol will be this header lookup value. Okay, so let's fix some more things here. So header is both a React function component, and we're going to say that this has fragments on it, which can be an object, which is a key of string, and a value of, what does GQL return? Document node. Okay, so making some quick types here just to say that fragments is an allowable property on this component. Okay, so now symbol, we want to make symbol a valid prop that we're inserting here. Now, what I should be able to do is, now that we've written this fragment out, I should be able to come in here and say npm run build types. And what should happen is I now should have a type called header lookup. So let me do symbol is of type header lookup fragment. So now symbol, as we can see here, will have all the data that we need. So instead of data.main, actually I want to call that lookup. Lookup. Okay, so instead of data.main, this should be lookup. Lookup.symbol, lookup.company name, lookup.logo URL, etc. I'm not really liking this name lookup. I'm probably going to think of a different name for that. But it is the type that it is on. So now this header is defining what the view is, its styles, its layout. It's defining the data that's required for it, and it's exposing that as a fragment. So if I go back up to the parent view that is that would be showing this header, so let's add in this. Let's add in header. Okay, header, save that. Should all be the same without the red border. That's a good sign. Should all be the same. So now this header lookup fragment is pulling in all of the fields that are required. So what that means is, here on the parent level component, I don't need to specify any extra fields that this parent component isn't using. So for instance, the parent component isn't using logo URL, and it's not using company name, or let's say it's not even using symbol right now. But all of those fields are being pulled in because we are including this header lookup fragment. So we're going to begin compacting and reducing our what our query looks like from the parent, because each component that we're going to be adding in will have its own fragment that defines the data it needs. I hope that makes sense. Ask questions if it doesn't. Okay, so once again, we've been playing with data, but let's actually play with some UI. So see, I knew this background was gray because now I can see the white here. And in fact, let's make this screen. Let's make this screen white and see how far that gets us. Okay, we have some gray down here. We're not going to worry about that right now. Okay, so let's work on the layout here. So we are in our header component. Let's work on the layout. So we've got a couple different things here. So first off, we've got the image and we've got the text. So everything in React Native is Flexbox, and Flexbox is our friend. So we're going to make sure that we have everything grouped together. So first we want to group the text, because that's going to be on one side of the Flexbox, and we want to group the logo. That's going to be on the other. So let's create just a view that is going to group up this text. And honestly, that may be all we need for now. So let me save this, and visually, nothing will happen. But now we have two children, which is the view, just unnamed view right now, and image of the top level component, which is using a style of container. So thank you, GitHub Copilot. We do want to use flex direction row, because now these things, instead of being laid out vertically, we want to lay them out side by side. Right now it's left aligning everything, so everything is showing up here on the left, but we want to spread them apart. So that will be a justify content of space between. Copilot is doing great today. Okay, so that's nice and fancy. Let's vertically center these as well. So that's going to be our align items property, and we'll say center. So that's centering with the logo. Now let's work on our fonts and sizing and colors. So in my Figma file here, I'm using the Enter font, which I am unsure if that's what's being used here or not. Let's check this out. Actually, I'm gonna ignore the font family right now. Let's go for colors and sizing. So let's say this is a 14, and I made a color in Figma called Label Subtle. So let's go to Inspect, and we've got this hex code here for Label Subtle. So I probably am going to want to create a file, which I'm going to call styles, just .ts. And I'm going to export const colors, and we'll say, we're going to copy what we've called this in Figma, label subtle. So we've got logo. Let's make a few more styles. So let's say we have a symbol style, and this color is going to be colors.label subtle. Excellent. That's a size of 14. So let's do font size 14. Okay, and then let's do company name. And that's going to be just plain old black and size of 24. I didn't save everything, save everything. And now let's add our styles into text. So style is going to be styles.symbol, symbol, and styles.company name. Okay, so that is looking better. We've got now, there's a little bit of space in between these. So in Figma, it's registering as 6 pixels of space. So is there a spacer? There's not a spacer. Okay, so there are a couple different ways you could do this. You could do a margin. So we could do either a margin bottom on the symbol. We could do a margin top on the company name. We could do a margin on both of them. As I've done more and more UI programming, and as I've read opinions on the internet, margin is becoming more and more of a not best practice. Wouldn't call it a worst practice, but maybe not best practice. Because if you pull in and use components throughout your project, you may want margin in some places and not in others. Like defining a margin on components, this symbol inherently doesn't require a margin. This company name inherently doesn't require margin. It's just when they're used together. So rather than using margin, I'm going to create another component called spacer. Spacer. Okay. And let's create a component, spacer. We're going to allow this to have a width, maybe, of a number, or a height of a number. Okay, so it could be either one of those. Now, how would I then do runtime styles here? would I be able to do a runtime style? Let's see, view style with height. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so let's say width height. This is not going to have any children. And so this is saying that width does not exist on type props. You're like, but it's up here. Well, it can get cranky sometimes. So we are going to say height could exist, but really it should never be used. And then in here, width could exist, but really it should never be used. Okay, so we've got spacer. We're using the width and height, passing that into a style. So honestly, this is just a blank view that we can use as a spacer component. So in here, I should be able to do spacer, and I want to say height of 6 to spread them out. And if I do that, I now have a space of 6 between them. So this is just an alternative of doing margin or padding on components. I would say it's not really a replacement for padding, it's a replacement for margin, technically. Okay, what's left? We have this border. We don't really have borders throughout this, underneath the sections throughout, so I am going to just add this border to this section here. So we've got a line of this color. So our colors here, I'm going to make a border color. Great. And then on our view of the container here, I'm going to say border bottom. Let's just say border color in general. And then let's say border bottom width of 1 and border bottom do I have to do border style? No. Okay, nice. Okay, I don't think our border color, though, actually picked up. That looks entirely too dark. Let me save. I didn't save my styles file. Okay, so we've got this happening here. Now, we've got all this like padding in here, but our border should go edge to edge. So let's adjust that. That's going to be here in the parent view. Bring some of these things down, just close that out. Okay, so in the parent view, we've got a padding around all the screen of 30. I'm going to comment that out for now. So now everything's going edge to edge. So we could either manage like the padding at the parent level or the padding at the individual component level. I'm going to manage it at the individual component level because there are some things that we may want to go to edge when we're, say, scrolling or managing this image, because apparently this image itself has a lot of padding just built into the image. So I'm going to say that we'll manage the padding at the child component levels. So let's remove that for good. And let's take a look at our padding here. We've got a padding of 24. So on our header section, I'm going to say that we've got a padding just left for now of 24. Now this is probably something I want to add into my styles. In fact, let's go ahead and start that. I'm not quite sure what system we'll use here, but let's just say, let's kind of use like a font size sort of system. So, or not font size, font weight sort of system, where we've got like 100 through 900, where 400 is the default. So let's say our 400 spacing is size 24. Okay, spacing dot 400. Okay, so we have our header component up here. Our size here is, I'm sure, off. We really should have 10 pixels below here. We're going to have a lot more than that. Part of that is because of the size of this image. You know, when we designed this, I wasn't quite sure how the images would appear. And because this is just kind of whatever sort of logo image the API gives us, this is probably going to have a lot of variance. Let's make this a bit smaller. Let's try 80 by 80 and see how that works out. And I do probably want to have a padding top, perhaps. I'm going to be making up some of this as we go. So let's just say 48. I'm just going to do a fixed number right now, because I'm not quite sure what I want this to be. Okay, let's leave it like this for now, and we'll see how things look as we continue on. So that is our header. Excuse me. So recapping real fast before we move on. We created a fragment in our header so we could define at the component level that's using this data what data would be required. And then we used the component and passed in our data. It was as simple as that, right? I'm sure. Okay, let's, while we're here, let's make some commits as we go. So symbol, we got that. We did a spacer. We did some styles. We added a header. We did fragments. Okay. Add header. Header section. Use latest query. Always nice to make commits along the way in case you really screw something up. Then you can just go back to where you were. Okay, so I've got my parent and my header here. Moving on to the next section. This one will be fun. So we've got like a table of data here. So we've got several different values. We've got 2 columns of it. So I can see really a couple of different things here. We've got like an attribute. We've got the attribute label, and we've got the attribute value. Each one of those have a border. So I can see here it's really a border bottom between all of them. And they've got spacing. We're displaying it in 2 columns. That's nice. So let's create this. So we'll call this overview or fundamentals, or we'll call it overview. Okay, so in stocks, we'll say overview.tsx. And that's the file we're working on. I'm going to use my nice little snippet here to pull in an overview real fast. I'm going to pull this in here so we can see it on our screen. And we have, in fact, we don't see any text. I should update my snippet here because you're not supposed to put text inside of a view component. It should only go in a text component. We're not pulling an overview. I can see this is really freaking out down here. Where is overview coming from? Import overview. Oh, okay. Okay, I see. Okay, so I put the poor server, I was putting it in an infinite loop here. So this parent component happened to be called overview. So I'm going to actually instead call this lookup screen. So we can get rid of some naming conflicts here. You can't see behind my face. Lookup screen. Okay, I'm going to restart my server. Poor thing, I put it in an infinite loop. Okay, so we've got header and overview, and we've got our blank overview screen. If I hit R in my terminal, that should reload our app here in iOS, hopefully. maybe let's restart it. Okay, we're happy again. Okay, so we've got our header and we've got overview component. What goes in our overview? Market cap, PE ratio, trailing 12 months, PE ratio forward, profit margin, Expo Go quit unexpectedly. Whoops. That's fine. I think. Overview 2. We're still up and running. Okay. Profit margin, free cash flow yield, dividend yield. Excellent. Okay, so let's start again by defining the fragments that we need. So if we remember in our header component, we made this fragments property. And in order to not make Typescript angry, we added this type on our component that says we are allowed to have a fragments property. Now, we're going to be needing this type in various places. So let's add a types file in our components directory. And I'm going to pull this in as a type. I'm going to call this type with fragments. So this is going to just represent kind of an extension that we could put on a React component and say that this this can have fragments. So export type with fragments. So the header is now a React function component and with fragments. So in our overview, we can do the same thing here and with fragments. So, and we get a red squiggly because we don't have fragments. So now we're saying we do actually need fragments. So what is this fragment going to entail? Well, we're going to pull in a lookup element. And on this element, we're going to have the stats that we need. Turns out those are all already here in this stats field on our parent. So I'm going to cut that and move that here into overview. And we need to define what this is. So fragment overview lookup on lookup. That sounds good to me. So each fragment has to have a name and it has to have on a type. So this is a little confusing because I have so many things called lookup here. But lookup is a specific GraphQL type. It is the type that is returned from our lookup query. And we can see that right here. So the query that happens to be named lookup returns an object of type lookup. So I hope that makes sense. So lookup is a type. This name is whatever name we want to give it. I typically give it the name of the component concatenated with the name of the type. So overview lookup. You can name it whatever you want. So let's run an npm run build types. This will generate our types, which means we now have a type for this overview lookup fragment. So lookup will be a prop that we're requiring for this overview, which will be of overview lookup fragment. We can now pull this fragment into our parent component, overview lookup, and we can be sure to include that fragment down here. All right, I do have some sort of error. Okay, so overview is supposed to have a lookup. Great. That's what we want. Save. I'm not sure why this has some red squigglies. I'm going to move on from that for now, but that's a bit weird. Okay, so we're still in our overview component. We've got market cap, PE ratios, all sorts of things. So we kind of want to make this like table sort of thing. We've got a label, we've got a value. We did make a simple table before, but since this is a new video, I'm going to do this from scratch. So let's just make one of these, and then we will duplicate those efforts into all 6. So let's start with market cap. And what am I calling? MKT cap. Probably don't need to abbreviate that. Let's see what it just looks like with market cap. Okay, so text, we're going to pull this in from our lookup.stats.marketcap. Okay, so we've got a market cap of a very long number. Now, in another video, or perhaps offline, I can't remember which now, I did create a utility for solving this problem. I cannot find that right now. Okay, we have utils. Okay. In my modules folder, I have a file called utils. And the only util right now is called format money. And this turns this really long number into something we can, as humans, recognize quickly. So let's do format, no. Yes, format money. Money. Don't you hate it when automatic imports don't automatically import? Okay, modules, util. Excellent. Okay, so market cap 2.39 T for trillion. In our design, that is capitalized. So let's update our utility. So let's go to our formatter, and then let's say, real quick, I'm going to select all 3 of those, and I'm going to transform those to uppercase. Okay, market cap 2.39 T. Again, some of this is fake data. Do not make investment decisions based upon this screen. Okay. Let's see, so we've got a container. Let's wrap these 2 in another view and call that attribute, okay? And then let's make an attribute style. And this, much like our header, we want to display in a row. So these are displayed on top of each other right now. Let's display those in a row. Great. Okay, again, we want to spread them apart. So these are 2 elements within a parent container. So now that we're in a row, we can say, we can use the space between value on justify content to spread those apart. Great. Okay, let's keep going. Let's add a border on those. So border bottom color, we're going to use our colors of border. Let's see if that's the same color as our header. I believe it should be. So E3E 70C, E3E 70C. Okay, so same border color. Border bottom width of 1. Okay, so we've got that. Now there's some decent sizing in here. This is saying that we've got 12 pixels on the bottom. So let's do a padding vertical right now of 12. We may have to adjust the top and bottom padding though to match. Okay, so we've got this attribute. So we could break this attribute into, we've got 6 of these. So we can either like copy and paste this over and over. We could iterate through an array. We could do all sorts of things. I think for right now, we'll keep this simple. So let's just make 3 of these. So we've got trailing 12 months and forward PE ratio. So let's do PE, trailing 12 months. This is not formatting money. So this is just lookup.stats.PE ratio trailing 12 months. Then we've got PE forward. Again, lookup stats PE forward. Okay, that's nice. Now we've got our second column here. So we're going to do 6 of these, but let's wrap this in a column. So let's add another view in here, and let's say this is a column. Okay, and then let's copy and paste this and make 2 columns. So we've got a container and then a column. Let's see, let's just kind of save this and see where we're going. So everything's vertically stacking right now. But the overall container, which now contains, as you can see, 2 columns, instead of stacking those vertically, we want to stack the columns horizontally. So on the container level, we want to say flex direction row. So now we've got the 2 columns stacked. The columns themselves are vertical, but they are stacked side by side in a row. Great. Okay, now the columns, we want them to like spread. We want them to take up all of the available space possible. So on each column, this is where the actual flex attribute comes in. We're saying that flex of 1, meaning at a ratio of 1, we want it to flex grow. We want it to grow as much as possible. And because both columns have a flex of 1, they'll grow evenly. Okay, so I'm going to save that. We're getting a little closer still. Now we have, again, a spacing issue. And this is where our spacer is going to come in very handy. So if you look at this, we've got this column, we've got this column. We've got space on either side. And then we have also a space in the middle. So let's add between our columns a spacer element, which is going to have a width. How wide is our width? It's of 20 wide. Okay, so now we have this space in the middle. So now let's add some space on the sides. Okay, and we've got a space of 24 there. So let's do on our container a padding horizontal. So this will be padding on both sides, left and right. We have a spacing attribute in our styles file, as you remember. And our default spacing, which is labeled a number 400, is 24. Okay, so we've got that here as well. Now, this space between the section header and between this section is 24. Instead of putting that here in the overview component, I think I'm going to go here and add that into the parent level component. So I'm going to say spacer height 24. Because again, I could use this overview component in a variety of places, and I could use this header component in a variety of places. And those may not need the same space on top and bottom. So I'm going to try to keep these child components as compact physically as possible. And anytime I need spacing between them, I'll do that on the parent level. Okay, so I've just added the parent level spacing in here. So let's complete this data here. We have the same things on the left and right side. Let's adjust this. So what do we have? We have profit margin, free cash flow yield, and dividend yield. So are we capitalizing M? No. Profit margin, free cash flow yield. My throat's a little dry. Dividend yield. Okay. Let's do lookup. Stats. Profit margin percent. Okay. Let's see how that comes across. Okay, so it comes across as an integer without the percent sign. So we will add in the percent sign ourselves. Free cash flow yield, FCF. Great. Do we want, okay, our design has percentages on all of these. Okay, great. So we'll add percentages there. And then dividend yield, guessing we'll need to add a percentage there too. Okay, great. So we have our overview section. We've got all the nice spacing, borders, numbers, etc. Looking nice. Okay, so I think that's a good time for another quick commit here. So we've added our overview. I think that's what we've done. We've added an overview section. Add overview section. Moving right along. Snapshot, complete with colors and triangles. Oof. Okay, snapshot. This is also the first time we have like this section title here. So here we got snapshot, and then looking further down below, we've got this compare as well. So, okay, so then we've got snapshot, we've got today, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year. We've got a CAGR on the 5 year and 10 year. I'm just kind of loading this up in my head. We could have positive percentages, we could have negative percentages. Okay, let's look at the query that we had designed for this. So we're calling this, we've got several snapshots here. So in a snapshot, we have a change percent and a CAGR percent. We've got all these different things here. Okay, so let's go in here to our components, stocks. Let's create a new section. This is our snapshot section. Okay. Gonna run my fragment. Got a snapshot component. Gonna add in snapshot here. Text strings must be within a rendered text component. I am aware now. Okay, text. Gonna need to fix my fragment. Am I gonna say that each time, or am I actually going to fix it? Okay, going back to our Apple screen. Snapshot component, excellent. So snapshot today, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year. Okay, let's start with 10 year. We'll start at the end, and because it has the most items in it, 5 or 10 year. And we've got our snapshot header. Okay, so snapshot, hey, look at that, we've got our title. Snapshot, great. Okay, 10 year, a number, a CAGR. So let's just start mocking this out. So 10 year, a number, and a CAGR. A number and a CAGR. And I'm just going to say, something I'll know is wrong. 99% CAGR. Okay, let's add in our data that we need, okay? So let's use our type on this component to say this is a component with fragments. Let's once again go down and define our fragments on this component. This is going to be lookup. We're going to use our GQL tag to make a GraphQL document. We are going to call this snapshot lookup on a lookup type. And then we're going to pull in the values that we need. So we're going to pull in all of this. These are the data elements that we want on our snapshot. Okay, so we'll pull in this fragment, snapshot lookup. We will add that in down here, snapshot. And we will save everything. Let's do a build types. Okay. Got a white screen over here. Okay, let's look at, let's see. Why are you upset? Okay, I'm not sure why these keep adding in red squigglies. That's very weird. Okay, but we should have in here a lookup, which will be snapshot lookup fragment. This will have lookup. Okay, so now here's our 10-year. Let's start pulling in our actual numbers. So we've got lookup dot snapshot 10-year dot change percent. And I think we'll have to add the percentage. And then a similar thing here, we'll have the CAGR. So lookup dot snapshot 10-year dot CAGR percent. Save that. Okay, now here in snapshot, we need to pass in our lookup. We're getting angry and angrier over here. I'm again not really sure why those red squigglies are showing up. Okay, our screen loaded. And we do have some percentages in here, which are different than the manual ones I typed in before. So these are the ones that we're loading from the API. Great. Okay, let's create this green thing here. So we've got a green background. So I'm going to add that to our colors. Green background. Okay. And we're just, yeah, let's make a view. And we need to style this. So we'll call this change percent positive. Okay. Change percent positive is going to have a background color of green. I don't wonder but what I need to call that positive background. Let's see what kind of border radius we have. We have a border radius of 5 pixels. Okay, so border radius of 5. I do want to have, let's pull in our left and right padding here. So padding horizontal of spacing 400. Okay. Looking good. Let's add our space between our sections. Again, we're adding space between sections in the parent level component. So let's add the spacing there. Looking better. Let's look at our snapshot. So snapshot, what is this size? Okay, so this is size 18. So let's say header is a font size of 18. So styles header. Okay. Oh, that's the 10-year. I added that to the wrong thing. I thought that looked weird. Okay, so we've got 10-year, 250%, 30% CAGR. Let's see. Okay, so this number is green. It is of size 14%, and it has a weight of 500. So let's add a green color. Change percent positive. Okay, so these types of things will likely be reusing throughout our app. So I'm going to create a separate component for this. Let's do. Okay, components, and I'm just going to create that at the root level right now. We're going to say change percent. Yes. Okay, in component, change percent. We're going to say that this will take, we're not going to do any GraphQL here because this is really GraphQL independent. We're just going to accept a numerical value. So we'll say value will be a number. Value. I'm going to bring this view in. Okay, so let's bring in text from React Native. Our value is going to be what's passed in, and container is here. So our container will have these attributes. We no longer need that there. And we'll pull in a change percent, the value of lookup dot snapshot 10-year dot change percent. Okay, pulling colors. Save everything. Nothing changed, exactly what we wanted. Okay, so let's do text. We're going to make a text style. So this will be colors of green. Add that style to our text. We've got green now. Let's do a weight, font weight of 500. Let's do a font size of 15. Why does it want a string? Okay, it wants a string. Okay, so let's look. We've got a padding of 6 on top and bottom, and a strange padding of 13 on the right sides. That may just be because they're stretching. So let's say it's a 6 all the way around, and that'll just be a 6 minimum on the horizontal. So padding of 6. Okay. Now a triangle. Okay. Let's do an SVG for a triangle. And let me check something real fast before we go. Okay, so right now we have a package installed called React Native SVG, which is a helpful way to do SVGs in your React Native, as the name might imply. Okay, so let me go into my Figma here. We've got an arrow up, and this arrow up has a polygon in it, and I'm going to copy that as SVG. For right now, I'm just going to stick this right here. Actually, let me stick it right here. Const up arrow. This is going to be a component that returns some SVG. Now, this SVG, I'm going to make this to be friendly with React Native. So I'm going to just capitalize the components here and import those from the React Native SVG package. I don't need this XML attribute. And honestly, that should really be it. So let's add in our up arrow and see if it's happy. Not too shabby. Okay, so now instead of vertical, we want these to be horizontal. Again, we'll utilize our flex direction of row. These are now in a row. Great. We want them vertically centered with each other, so we'll use align items of center. Nice. And let's say, so we want really everything to be centered here. All of the items should be centered within this box. So that will be a justify content of center. Looking better. So now let's adjust the space between the arrow and the number, which is 5 pixels. So this will be a case where, because it is self-contained, you could just use a margin here, or you could use your spacer component. I'm going to use a margin in this case. So margin left of 5 pixels, because the text will always need a margin left of 5 pixels. Great. Okay, so this is nice if it's green, but what if it's red? Maybe we'll have some red in our data, I'm not sure. But let's go with green for now, and we'll wait till we get a negative here to do that. Actually, I take it back. We'll do it right now. Okay, so let's try negative 20%. So instead of putting this in, let's say our change percent is negative 20. I'm just going to hard code that. Well, I don't want up of negative 20. That makes no sense. So let's pull in our down arrow and start doing our reds. So again, I'm going to copy this as SVG. I'm going to make a down arrow. I'm going to capitalize all these tags, to make them React Native friendly. I don't need the XML namespace. Let's go to our styles. We don't have a red in here. Let's make a red. This will be a red text. I'm gonna copy that. And then now we need our red background. Copy that in. Okay. Now we'll need to vary these styles based upon if this value is positive or negative. So the value, if it is below 0, then let's do a, actually let's start with the positive. If it's greater than or equal to 0, which we'll probably really want to think about if it's exactly equal to 0, but let's say for now, if it's greater than or equal to 0, it's an up arrow. If it's below 0, it's a down arrow, okay? So we've at least got a down now. Okay, and we need to know if this is positive or negative. So let's say, once again, let's create a variable. So let's say is positive. So if it is positive, we'll pull in the style positive. And this style will have a background color of red background. No, if it's not positive, if it's not positive, we'll pull in the style of negative. Great. Hey, Sam, thanks for tuning in. Oh, good. I'm glad you're liking this series. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, so we're getting closer. Our text, let's see, negative, text, negative, text, negative. will be a colors of red. GitHub Copilot is so smart. Okay, so if it's not positive, then pull in a style of text negative. Okay, so we've got red. Then let's try this out. Let's make this a positive again and make sure it's green. And we've got green. And we've got red. Okay, now the only thing is too, if it's red, I don't need to repeat a negative percent, a negative value here. So this number, the display of it really needs to always be its absolute value. So I'm going to say math.absolute value. That will just remove the negative sign for us if it exists. Okay, so we're either down 20 or we're up 20. Not too bad. Great. Okay, so let's pull back in our actual change percentage here. We now have this nice change percent component that we can reuse. Okay. Let's continue working on our snapshot section. Okay, so we have our 10-year, we have this percent CAGR here. So let's take a look at that text. That text is small and subtle. Label, let's see, we have a label subtle color already. That's good. So let's pull that in. So let's say this is our CAGR label. Colors is label subtle. Okay. What's the size there? The size is 10 pixels, so that's tiny. Font size of 10. And it is right aligned. Okay, so let's review this. So if we're looking at just this item here, we've got three things in a column. We got the 10-year label, we've got this change percent component, and we've got this CAGR. Really, this is left aligned, full width, and right aligned. Or you could think of it as full width text, which ends up being left aligned, full width change percent, and right aligned CAGR. So what we can do, those three items are already in a column. They're actually already full width, as you can see from the change percent, but this one item needs to be aligned differently. So what we can do there is this CAGR, there's a property called align self. So typically you're doing like align items on a parent component and saying how each of the child component items should align. In this case, I want to choose one of the items, and on that item I'm going to say align self, and we'll say flex end, and this should do it at the right. And it does. So that's good. All right. So now we want 4 of these, and we want them grouped together. So let's say, so we got a container, header, CAGR. Let's create a style for, so we're looking for like individual time frames here. I might just call this group. I'm going to call this group. That's what's nice about doing things in separate components is you can stay really simple with your names. So I'm going to just say view, style, group, in that view. Okay, so all of these are in a group. Okay, I'm going to copy and paste that 4 times. Now, the groups themselves are going to be horizontally laid out. So let me create another grouping here. I'm going to say this is called groups. We have groups, and groups is going to have a flex direction of row because we want all of these laid out. Again, we want these to take up all of the space possible. So each group is going to have a flex, or behind the scenes, a flex grow of 1, so they'll all grow evenly. Okay? Then in between them, we have a spacing of 10 pixels. Now, I want to try out a property on here that is either released, or it's being released, or it's about to be released. So there's a gap property that really came from grid CSS that people like so much that they've brought it into Flex. Let me see if the gap property is working in here right now. So let's do a gap of 10. Okay, gap is not working right now. I actually think there might be a version of Expo that was just released with this that I haven't upgraded to yet, or it's going to be in the next version of Expo. But for this exact use case, where you have a flex box of items and you want a specific gap in between them, then you can use the gap property. But that is clearly not working here yet. So instead, I'm going to use my spacer component. Did I say 10? I did. So spacer width of 10. Gap is going to be really nice. Okay, so we've got 10 pixels between all of those. The first two do not have caggers. So today and 1 year do not have caggers. So let's remove that, and let's go ahead and update these labels. So today and 1 year, no caggers. 5 and 10 year do have caggers, okay? Snapshot, I am gonna just do a margin bottom there. That's nice. So snapshot, header, margin bottom of 18. Okay. And let's make sure that we're pulling in the right data. So snapshot today, snapshot 1 year, and then snapshot 5 year on both of these. Okay, so we've got today, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year. Great. Let's look at this label. So this label has some spacing between it and the change percentage. And even the change percentage has some spacing between here. So this is a vertical list of items. We can see there's 4 pixels here and 4 pixels here. So again, if we had gap on this group, we could define a gap of 4 pixels, and it'll put 4 pixels between these items, which would be nice. We don't have that. So I'm getting close to like wanting to make this a component, which you could totally do. What do I want to do in this case? I think in this case, I want to say, okay, let me do something because it will illustrate a point. Let's say I wanted to apply a style to this change percent here. So it's a custom component, but I wanted to additionally apply a style because let's say I want to add a margin to these. Let's say I want to add a margin top and a margin bottom of 4 pixels, given that we don't have the gap property right now. So I'm going to say change percent. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to say styles dot percent. But we can see that style is not a property on our change percent component. So let's make it one. So let's open up our change percent component, move snapshot over here. Right now, change percent only accepts our manually created props. But we want to accept other props as well. We want to accept any props that are available on view. So we're going to pull in the view props type. And now any view props type is available within props. And we can see our red squiggly went away from right here. It's still right here because we haven't defined the style, but it went away from right here. So now I can say rest props. So this is the spread operator. I'm going to say any other keys that aren't the key value, bring into REST props, and I'm going to bring in another one in a minute, and I'll show you why. So let's say ... REST props, okay? So if we added anything else, that's going to come to the top layer, component view. Now, we are defining our own style. So let's say style was included in REST props and it was in here, but then we immediately override it. So I want to bring in style here. And let's add the user provided style to the end of this list. Okay, so this is how we can allow adding component users to add in their own props that would normally be available on view. So let's say we have a %prop and it has a margin vertical of 4 pixels. Let's save all of that, and then we save, and we can see that spacing has increased. All right. How are we doing? We're about an hour and a half in. Okay. This is looking pretty nice. The only thing I'm questioning here is these labels might be a little large. So right now this says it's 12. So let's look at our snapshot. I don't know if these are 12 or not. So we're going to call this label time frame. So styles.timeframe. Okay. Okay, so time frame, font size 12. Okay, those were supposed to be a little smaller. And you know what? I think we are using the enter font already. All right, our snapshot section is looking pretty nice. I am liking that. That is looking very close to our design here. Now, I did just notice that this spacing up here is smaller than this spacing here. This spacing looks like a lot more. That's 64. Okay, so let's do our spacing above snapshot is 64. That's closer. All right, let's commit our progress. Add snapshot section. What do we have left? Okay, our next section is compare. Now, I said in the beginning, we're going to skip the graph today. I do have another video on graphs in React Native. That's using I think it's the Victory library. But we're going to focus on these right now, okay? This will be fun. Okay, so we've got, I might want to try to pull this up side by side. Maybe. Maybe I might regret this. Okay, let me get this situated with my face. Oh, Figma doesn't actually get very short. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, you know what I could do? Pull it over here. Oh, Figma also doesn't get very narrow. Okay. Okay, that may or may not work out how I wanted. Okay, so let's make a comparison section or a compare section. So in our component stocks directory, I'm going to make a compare.tsx. Just stub out an empty component here. And add in my text. If this weren't my last one, I'd fix this issue right now. Okay. Let's go to parent. And we're going to, once again, add our spacer and add compare. Okay, so we have our compare component here. Okay, so we got lots of things going on in this compare component. Let me refer back to our query because I want to see what we've got here. So we've got comparison. Do we have another? Okay, I see. So our time frame is really what goes into the historical total return section. Okay. So we've got our main, I'll pull this up. So we've got our main lookup, we've got our comparison lookup. So it's Apple versus Vue. Looks like I'm looking pretty bright on screen. Let me close my blinds a bit. We've got our comparison versus Vue, and the time frame that we're picking. I can get rid of a screen here. The time frame that we're picking in these tabs ends up being the time frame in historical total return. Okay. So let's do it. All right. So if I'm looking at this as a whole in the design overall, we can see that the overview attribute styles that we created up here are also being used down here in this comparison. So I'm probably going to want to extract that out into something I can use multiple times. We've got some tabs up here. We've got some colors. So let's just start. Okay, so we'll start with the header. Okay, so let's say, so snapshot and compare actually have the same header here, like heading. So let's do a, I'm going to create a component called section heading. This is going to be a component. It's really just going to accept the same props as text props. Text props from React Native. And instead of a view, this is going to be text. So this is going to be children, and we're going to do our same REST props strategy here. Also pulling in style, because we're going to be using our own styles. So text, REST props, we'll use our own styles. We'll use the user-provided styles, children, text. Great. Okay. Call this text. Why is this? JS does not support attributes because it does not have a prompts property. What? Okay, so text. Let's look at our snapshot. Again, we're making our heading here. So our heading, our header, is this thing here. Why is this red? Oh, I didn't pull in text. Okay. Okay, so let's do our header. I'm going to break my rules a little bit. I am going to use margin in this case. I am going to use the margin bottom, and it's going to affect spacing for things outside of this component, but we're just going to accept this and move on for now. We'll be fine, I promise. Okay, so instead of defining our manual header here, we're going to do section heading. Section heading. We pulled this into here. I think all of this is good. I'm going to save everything. We should see no changes. Excellent. Compare section. Let's do section heading. Section heading. So when I save this, this should get larger. It does. Okay, and let's do padding horizontal so we can begin looking like we belong in the world. Okay, great. Okay, so we've got these tabs. I might actually skip those tabs right now. And we're going to move on to these down here, okay? So let's move on to the data. So again, we're going to define what data we want to bring in on our compare component. So with fragments. So we're going to want to bring in we're going to want to bring in a couple of things. So on our main, let me collapse a bunch of these. So we really want the same thing for both of these. So again, we have a main stock and a comparison stock. So let's define our fragments. So compare.fragments is an object. We have got lookup. We're going to bring in our GQL to make a GQL document, compare lookup. We're going to add in what we need. Okay. So we need a couple of different things. First, we need the symbol, okay? Then we need the total return. So we've got historical total return for a given time frame. So right now, this time frame is 10 years, and that's kind of hard-coded into the query. We'll end up making that a variable, okay? So let's pull in all of this. Okay. And then we need also the PE ratio and the dividend yield, as well as the market cap. In the design, I labeled this assets under management. ETFs don't really have market caps. They instead have the total number of assets under management. But I'm pulling that in as a market cap right now. It's probably confusing. Okay, so bringing in the stats. So what I don't have here is market cap. That's why I started talking about that. Market cap. Okay. So this should be bringing in the data that I need. Okay, so, but this compare section is going to have it's actually going to have two props. It's going to have a main item and a lookup item. So let me build my types. So not yarn. npm run build types. Okay. So we're going to have a main not snapshot, compare lookup fragment, and also a comparison lookup fragment. So we kind of have like left and right. All right, so let's just start with main. Let's just start with the left here. And we want to pull in some of these. Now, like I said earlier, we've got this nice overview section up here that we've already styled these things for. So we want to pull in these or extract these attributes and its styling that we did earlier for this overview section into their own components. So let's make an attribute component. Let's pull this up side by side with our overview. Okay. So we're going to bring in this attribute and its styling into our attributes component. Okay. So let's just pull in one of these and begin styling away. So I do like, for pretty much all components, I like the top level view style to be container. So I'm going to keep container there. But we're going to copy in, we're actually going to cut in the values from our attribute. So let's bring in colors. Let's bring in the text components from React Native. We're not going to have this. Instead, we're going to allow two different things on an attribute. Again, no GraphQL involved here. This is just pure UI. So I want to have a label, which is a string, and I want to have a value, which is a string. Very simple. Label, value. If I can spell. Okay, so the label will be here, and the value will be here. Okay, so we've got attribute, label, value. I'm just now realizing we didn't actually do our font colors earlier. These labels should have a different font color. So this is a label subtle font color. So let's make a label style. And the color will be label subtle. Okay. Now let's use this attribute. So in this case, this will actually delete a lot of code. So we're deleting attribute. We already deleted attribute there. Okay. So this is going to be attribute label is this label, and value is this value. So this will take a little bit of refactoring here for a moment. So attribute label value, and same thing all the way down. Can I actually, yes, okay. Attribute label value not doing too shabby here. Okay. Okay, so a number of these worked out, some of them did not. Okay, so no ending of views, no ending of views. This value worked out. This value did not. Okay, so these are all percentages. Okay, let's adjust that. Okay, so this needs to be instead a string template literal with a percentage. Okay, these are numbers. Okay, so this is saying value could be a number. That's fine. Okay, so now everything in our overview section is using our new attribute component. Great. Okay, let's clear out our imports we don't need anymore. Okay, so we can save off and close overview. Now back in our compare, I should be able to use attribute. Now, one thing I did not finish off here is I didn't finish off using my fragments. So I did go ahead and create a fragment. So I'm going to show you using this fragment in two places. So both in our main symbol that we're looking up, or stock that we're looking up, we're going to use that here. Revenue is going to be the only straggler because, again, that's kind of leftover that I'll end up reusing later, either off air or in another video. And then comparison, we'll also use compare lookup here. And then we'll be sure and add in our compare fragment. Okay, so our query is looking quite short now, which is great. because each component that is making up this parent level screen is defining its own data of what it needs. All right. Okay, so we're going to now add in these attributes. So let's add in an attribute, label of market cap. I'm going to spell out market here. That's the one thing that's right now different than the design. Then let's do a PE forward. And then let's do a dividend yield. Okay, so this, oh, okay, or say nothing. Okay, again, we'll want to format our money here. So format money. So our market cap is large, hopefully. Dividend yield, we'll want to add a percentage in, which I might want to make into a function. In fact, let's do. So util, we'll say format percent. That's actually a really good idea, Copilot. Thank you. Okay, so we're rounding that to 2 decimal places. Okay, so if we've got that, then percentify this percent. Let's see. Fix my ternary there. Okay, so we have 60%, which sounds not right at all. Okay, so this is, let's see, value by 2. Okay, so this is value times 100, round 2. Okay, we don't want times 100. All right. Okay, so we have our attributes here. You know what we don't have is our label is not styled, because I can see it's not the appropriate color. Okay, so now those are the appropriate color. Okay, great. So we got Apple, market cap, PE, dividend yield. The only thing I don't have is total return. So let's do that. I think we're done with attribute. Okay, so total return comes in from historical total return, change percent. So we'll just add that in. Total return. This will be a format percent of main dot historical total return dot change percent. Okay, so we have our total return there. So now we have like a main and again a compare. So we need to do the same thing twice. So let's probably want to do a subcomponent here. So let's do a const compare column. Okay. And this is going to be a React component, doesn't have fragments. It's just going to have a lookup. The props, we're going to keep this simple. Compare lookup. Okay, so this is going to return an individual column. Okay. Now I have lots of red. That's okay because we've kind of changed our references here. So instead of main, this is going to be lookup. And this is, these are a bunch of sibling attributes. So for now, I'm going to put these in a fragment, actually, instead of wrapping them in like a view. I might change that in a bit. So let's add in our compare column here, lookup main, because we also want to do lookup comparison. Okay, so we've got two things here. It looks like one big thing because we're not in columns yet. Okay, let's add a text attribute up top so we can more easily see what symbol we're looking at here. Okay, so we're looking at apple and boo. All right, so let's make these a view. Okay, so styles, style.column, style. Okay, we don't have a column style. And let's do a columns view here. Columns. Okay, we're going to do our flex direction of row so that the columns will appear side by side. So we've got side by side here. Again, we want them to expand into all available space. So each column should have to be able to grow in an aspect of 1. We could put a gap in here if that was supported. We don't have support for that, so we're going to add in our spacer. How big is our spacer? Probably 10 pixels. Nope, it's 20 pixels. Let's be sure and import that. Okay, so we've got a space, between. Okay, we've got a space between those. Now let's add in, let's style up these a bit. So Vue here is a nice 14. Okay, so this is, we'll call this a label. No, a symbol. Symbol. Okay, this text also needs to be aligned in the middle. So remember earlier we used align self. And so we can say align self center. If we add in all the right commas, then that centers that up. Now, later on, I do want to add these little circles here for use in this graph. So we'll go ahead and add in those circles now. And those are just going to be plain old views that have a border radius. That's all we need for a circle. So we're going to have really a symbol container and then a symbol label. So I'm going to rename this style with function F2 to symbol label, and that'll rename both its definition up here and its use down here at the same time. So that's F2 in VS Code. And then I'm going to make a view to contain that so we can put our text and now our, what am I going to call this? It's really our legend color. Legend color. Legend color. Yeah. And that's going to be the background color. Okay. And then I want to have a styles.legend circle. So legend circle. How big's our legend circle? It is 12 pixels. I'm going to go ahead and copy this orange. Okay, so in the compare column, I want to accept both a lookup and actually require a color. So color is going to be a string. So this color is going to be this. And then this color, I'm a little bit regretting pulling Figma over here, is going to be this blue. And I'm gonna manually do these for now. Okay, so legend color, view, I didn't finish this off. Styles, legend color. Let's see, legend color. This is just going to be color. Okay, so color is a value we're pulling in from props. And I'm going to pull this props type out and just name this. So compare column props. Okay, that's kind of funny. So that's, oh, okay. That's not quite what I was going after. Okay, the text needs to be outside. Okay, so legend circle, this is a width of 12 and a height of 12. Those are squares, so let's give it a border radius of, say, 6, which will make it into a circle. Okay. Okay, so style legend circle. Let's see, symbol. I'm gonna call this symbol container. And this is going to be a flex direction of row. I want this container, let's see, so this is symbol container. I want to align this self to be center. I want to align its items, though, also to be center. And then I want some space between them. I won't sing for you this time. Let's see, so 10 pixels of space between them. So I'll pull in my spacer, width of 10. We've got 10 pixels. Okay, that's looking pretty nice, y'all. I don't need the word component in here. So we've got compare. Do I call that compare? I do. Okay, compare. And we've got these tabs, which I may save for a different video. That will involve, we are 2 hours into this. I'm gonna save these tabs in a graph for a different video, or I'll do them off air. But we'll get these done for today. So we've got Apple, we've got Vue, we've got different things. It looks like, now these are pulling in the same data, and that just may be how it is coming back from the mock data. So let me look, the change percentage, yeah, okay, so the data, is the data the same on these? Oh yeah, the data is the same on these. So this is just, all these data are the same on both of these just because I'm pulling in mock data for now. Okay, so that's good. So we've got the comparison here aside from the tabs and aside from the graph. And again, that will have to be something for a different time. And then I have this revenue thing hanging out down here below, which kind of looks like the stepchild now. So what I am going to do is, let's go ahead and say add compare section. And I don't want to delete this because I am going to turn this into something. So what I do want to do is, let's just make this look a little bit nicer. So let's add in a view here. I'm going to call this styles section. Just for my own sake, I want this to be a little nicer. So section, padding horizontal is going to be our spacing 400. I don't need revenue header anymore. I don't need this, and in fact, I can use instead our section heading. So adding all of this will just make this look a little bit nicer, and it'll look closer to what we've got here. I don't know why there's so much space there, but let's add in another spacer between those. I don't know why there's another space there, though. That may be built into chart for some reason. I'm not, that may be an issue with chart. Attributes padding bottom, 45%. That sounds wrong. Are we using that? I don't think we are. Okay. There is something weird here on why these are. I'm not sure why these little red squigglies are happening here. We are pulling in all the fragments as expected. So that is a bit strange. That's something I'll have to look at offline though. I'm not sure, still not sure what's going on there. So let's say, I'm not sure why this space is here either. That's probably coming from chart, but again, something I might need to look at there as well. Let me hit a little nice R in here to refresh this fully. Yeah, that spacing's still there. Okay. So let's just say add, okay, so add a bit of styling around a revenue section. All right, so we have in this video taken this design, and coded it up in React Native and Expo using mostly views and texts and style sheet with a little bit of image, with a little bit of SVG, with several breaking out of components, and have gotten pretty well through this screen. So what would end up being done from here is bringing in these tabs for compare, bringing in the chart, and then testing this out with several different stocks, which I'm not going to do here because it's probably going to break. Testing this out in several different stocks, checking these values, because you'll have some numbers that are very large, some numbers that are very small. You'll have positive and negative numbers here. You'll have some stocks that may not have, say, 10 years worth of data. What do you do in that case? So there'll be lots of error checking here, seeing what's going on, seeing the differences in the variety of data. But the point of this video was mostly to be about UI and coding something up from design into code. I think we accomplished that today. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for staying tuned this whole time. This is a series, so feel free to check out other videos in the series or on my channel. And otherwise, I hope you have a great day. I'll see you next time.